Yesterday, what we have, we'll just go with a little review of what we have seen yesterday. So yesterday we were giving an introduction to the automation and principle of automation tool. That is, most of the automation tool, or in fact all the automation tool, works in the principle that we discussed yesterday. Right? And also we just opened up an RFT and then shown certain screen layouts. That is what we have done yesterday. So what we are going to cover today is, we first step in our rational functions yesterday, configuring the application for access, recording the script, understanding the script and its objects, that is the way the script is generated, and also different types of recording as well. There are two modes of recording available. Understanding the scope and its usage. The fourth point is the most important point in understanding the object recognition. This is the principle behind object recognition, followed by RFT. We'll try to explain you the other tools as well so that you get an idea on that part. So this is what we are going to see today. Please mute. You people have, please mute for yourself. Okay. Now, I will go to the notepad now. So yesterday we talked about OOP, so object-oriented programming. What is object-oriented programming? Each has an object and each object has attributes, or we call it as a parameters associated with the value. Then we move on to actions. Every object can be performed with certain actions. So what is the type of action you perform on that object is also can be defined against an object. Then we move on to the technology. So in technology, we have seen standard object. What is standard object? So the default, every technology has set up predefined objects which developer uses using a drag and drop mode, that we call it as a toolbar, and that object, when they push from the technology, is standard object, and there are cases where developer has to use custom objects. We have explained on what is custom objects as well. The custom objects are those where generally developer creates that object using either predefined classes. This is where the technology to technology it varies. Most of the today's current technology that we are into, developer cannot any new class on his own without referring to the parent classes. We call it as inheritance. I need to inherit a class. I copy the class, I make it as a new class. So custom objects is generally done by using the old class, that is existing class, and making it as a new class and define that new class. So yesterday we just shown you an example of how it is generally done. So technology, we have a standard object, custom objects. Any tool, every automation tool for that matter, they have a base language. If automation tool, for example, RFT, the base language is Java. When any application developed in Java, RFT can match that application in a really effectively. Right? QTP's native application is Windows based, Visual Basic, C++. It is basically a C#. So any application developed with the background of Windows, Qtp is preferable. Like that, every tool has their own base language. Right? It doesn't mean that the other language it doesn't support. It supports, but customization might require. That is what we are just trying to convey over here. So then we moved on to RFT. Today we start with that RFT. Before I move, in case if you have any questions on yesterday's session, you can just put that questions in the chat. I will answer it as I feel appropriate. Today's session, I'm perfectly recording in the way it is supposed to be done. I hope I can share it without any problem. So, any questions? You can please keep typing in the chat. I will answer it as I feel appropriate. So, since we are inside the tool, I will take each topic, give time for you to ask questions. We will answer that question, then I'll move on to the next topic. So I'm moving now on to VM player, where you can see a workspace. I'm just going to select the workspace. The first part in rational function tester, after the installation of RFT, one, we have to set the environment. That environment setting is, as I said earlier, this is the one which ensures the add-in plugins are mapped to the existing environment. Right? I will go to the new project. I will not use the existing project. So I'll go to the new project. I open a new project now. So when you can see that there are several, you can create several things. One is I can use the new, I can create a functional script. In case if you are going for a certification, RFT certification, is there anybody interested in RFT certification? Please put it in the chat, because the way we need to approach for certification is a different technique. The way we need to approach for project management is a different technique. Right? So if you are going for a certification, you need to inform me in the chat. Even if it is one, I need to give a hint on what are all the things that you need to take a note in case if you are going for a certification of rational functional tester. So I click on project. So I can create a functional test script. I can create an empty where you can type your script. I can create a folder, data pool, or test object map. That test object map is what we are going to focus today. So I go to new project. I click on new project. What is the type of project you want to create? I like to create a functional test project. Right? So I say click on yes, next. So for certification, the most important part, as you see, is most of the features of the product, RFT features, what you can do, what you cannot do, and where you can do this. Right? So that is most important point in RFT certification. So it will not be a problem-based solving. So you don't need to solve any issues in certification. It will be related to the features, default settings, what is the default values. So those are all the most important factors in certification. So very important factors. So now I created, I'll make it as a project 2. I'm putting it under this location, documents and settings, administrator, IBM, rational. These are all pre-created by rational, so I'm using that location as it is. I can change it. Right now, I'm not changing it to any other location. In case if you are working in a big industry where multiple people are accessing a project, then the location will be the network location. It will be pointing to the VSS or any virtual source, or we call it as a configuration management system. So instead of you pointing to the local machine, you will be pointing to the configuration system as well. So it is supported. All locations are supported. Right? I go and finish it. Now it creates an empty project now. So I go to that project, I close all the existing things. I'll make it as empty now. Now, this is what the user screen that when you work on the project, you will be having a startup page. Once you close the welcome page, once you close it, this is the screen you will land up at. So once you create a project, the first thing that you need to do is configuration. That is this configure button that you see in the top. So the questions that you can be asked is, right, how do I invoke an application? Where I need to configure invoking an application. Or how to configure an application that needs to work with rational functional tester. Without configuring to the rational functional tester application, it is very difficult to, it is not possible for you to invoke an application. So the first thing is, this is the one which will set the add-in, plugin with respect to the application and the RFT. So it ensures that all the plugins are enabled, and it will ensure that the objects are being recognized when you start recording on the application. So configure the application for testing, enable environment for testing. This is very important feature, and once you configure it, there is, as I said earlier, I am clicking on configure application. I clicked on to that configure application. Once if you see here, any new application, you can add it over here. Right? You can add a new application, click over here. So it will see what is the type of application you like to add. Java application, that is default available. HTML application, executable or batch file, flex application. You please note, you don't have a SAP application enabled. Right? The reason is you need to purchase a license for SAP add. And if you see here, .NET application is not default supported. Right? HTML application is supported. When I say HTML, it can be on any language. It can be on Python, it can be on JS, it can be a JSP file, it can be a simple HTML file, it can be a ASPX page, it can be any technology on the server. The presentation layer is what matters. Very important point that every user needs to know. When you are working with a web application, it is the HTML application is the base. Right? HTML, whether it is HTML or HTML5, it doesn't bother. It supports both. Right? Here, the technology is only pointing up to the server level. After the server, the presentation layer is purely an HTML application. You can add any of this application. If you are adding a Java application, you need to configure with jar file. You put a jar file over here and then browse it and then add the jar file. It will get added. In case if you are going with say web application, HTML application, next I give a URL over here. If it is a local, you can type the local host. Right? So you can do both and you can configure. So in my case, URL doesn't work. It gives an exception. I need to work around on what is the problem. It is not able to install the Java runtime environment. I will show you what is the error for your understanding. I need to resolve that. So I cancel the look. Anyway, this is the way you need to just create it. If you create it, it will get added over here. So which browser you want to use it, you can put that browser as well. It will automatically invoke that browser. So I'm not putting that now because we have an issue on accessing the URL in the system. So now executable or a batch file, I can use it like calculator local installer. So executable or a batch file. Next, browse. I'll try to put the calculator over here. So I just put a Windows system 32. So I'll just try to put the calculator over here. So calc, I'm just opening that file. It is exe. So I just opened it. I say finish. So now calculator is also configured for a test. So this is the way we need to add the application inside the rational functional tester. We call this as a configurator. So you need application configuration tool. The purpose of application configuration tool is to add the application, that is application under test. By selecting the technology, add the application inside this. Using this, the application that you have added here are the ones which you can use in the real time. So this is the first place we need to do. This is all becomes a starting trouble when you are trying to access from the rational functional tester directly by clicking on a record button. So you may not know where to go. So the first place is you have to configure the application. That's fine. I have done it, applied it, I finished it. Now it is configured, ready. Next thing is you need to do the environment. So I go to the configure. The environment has three components. One, you have a web browser, you can see over here. So when you see the Internet Explorer, when I configured it, I enabled it. When I click on test, it will open the IE, right? It has opened the IE now in my system. I allow the ActiveX controls to access my application. You can now see there is a welcome to browser enable diagnostic tool. When I click here, you can see now in a browser enablement test result failure. So he is not the JVM, the JVM or a Java runtime environment. I am not able to add it to my particular version of XP. It may be because of patches are not installed, anything is possible. So I need to look at it. There's an environmental difference between expectation of 8.5 version or the current version of JVM. We call it as a Java environment to my browser. So I need to look at it. Without this, I cannot invoke a browser-based application in my laptop at this virtual VMware. Right? When we are working with the browser, the pre-installed browser on my this XP machine is Firefox and IE. That is why those two are shown. You can add any browser. You can add Chrome as well. You can add any browser that you want. Right? But default, he is very comfortable with Firefox. Right? More than IE, he is comfortable with Firefox. Right? Very minor differences do come when you are dealing with different browsers because of a compatibility issue. There is a possibility. For this version 8.5.x version, I have not really tested the Chrome, latest version of the Chrome in this environment. Then you can, once you have that, so you can see that this is the problem we have. So we need to first ensure our system is compatible with the operating system that we are using. When I say system, it is about